Well, it was the most phony press conference I've ever attended, and although I put the best gloss on it possible at the time, it was a really unpleasant experience because they gave me a visa in London quickly enough to go to Moscow, and you must remember the Cold War was at its height, the really unpleasant atmosphere between the West and the Soviet Union. We called them the Soviets those days, not the Russians. So finally we got to the questions, and there was this bright young man, a very, very impressive. I was always very impressed with Yuri Gagarin, a very smart young man. In fact, he was picked, of course, because although they'd selected over 20 cosmonauts and trained, he was obviously the brightest, most self-assured, and yet he wasn't vain or arrogant. He was a rare human being. Did you land inside the Vostok spacecraft or eject and descend on a parachute, you see? As I said, we desperately wanted to know the answer. It was a very important answer for the Soviets because they wanted to claim this as an international aeronautical record. And to claim this as a record, the pilot had to be in the spacecraft for launch and landing. So that was a secondary reason we wanted to know. And the answer he gave to us, he was pulled down by Academician Gagarin, who was sitting in the chair, and he whispered in his ear before he answered. And then Yuri stood up straight and smiled and looked at the audience, and the answer that we got was, whichever way it was, you can see it was successful. There was a roar of laughter, and this set the tone for the whole conference.
I took my son, Charles, our son, then was 9. And he was a bit reluctant for me dragging him. And Florence was 5. And I said, come on. It'd been the first ever they'd sent a dog up the year before, Lolita or something, and the dog had come back safely. And we went to the corner of Barnamore Road and stood there, and they were a bit late in coming down from Ringway, you see. And Charles was a bit impatient. Florence was a little guy. I said, now look, and he was in this car being brought from the airport to the town hall. I said, there is somebody, the first human being ever has got away from the earth, from the roundabout. And I rushed back from the corner there, holding one and the other, and I was still very smart. But my memory, as he came, and I rushed back home here, left the 2 children in the house, leapt into my car, as I did, you see, and went down the road as fast as ever I could drive so that I wasn't late to get into the town hall. Got into the town hall and was up the stairs, standing in the bees, and that was, I can remember it so well. And I'd only just got myself there with various city councillors standing in a ring. Here he is. They said, and he came around and said, how do you do? But I remember looking at this young man and saying, you know what I said? I didn't say how do you do or anything like that. But I just said, wonderful. It was the only word I can remember hearing myself. People thought it was mad, you know what I mean? You don't normally do that. All I said was, oh, wonderful.
Someone came into the office and said, oh, Gagarin's coming, he's coming. So the boss said, oh, we'll all go to the front of the window, you know, the front of the building, and look out of the windows so you can wave to him. So people were cheering and clapping, so you could hear the crowds before he actually turned into Printer Street. he was a very good-looking young man. He had a beautiful smile. He was very relaxed, and he was waving to either side of the crowd.
Remember that sort of thing, you know. I do remember it was stopped, all the traffic. We didn't have this amount of traffic, but we did have traffic, and that was stopped, you know, for him to come down, you know. Yeah.
And of course he was just driving by, so after a few moments...
Oh, it was over in a flash, really, but it was... we did see him. We physically could see him with his big hat and his lovely eyes, and he had a beautiful face. And he was excited, and you know, to see somebody, don't we, and that, but to see somebody, for us in those days, to see somebody real that you'd read about and who'd done such a... It was just incredible. It was just incredible, and he was such a lovely looking man.
I only found out on the day that it was taking place, and we were all in... I was still working in the drawing office on technical publicity, but I was introduced to him so quickly that it was, well, I remember very little of it, because it was just, hello, welcome to Trafford Park. He was whisked onto the... All I remember is smiling faces and big crowds, and everybody thrilled to bits to see him.
Did the whole factory stop working?
Oh yeah, it was... He really was a star, and they made a big fuss of him, and I think it was good for publicity, really. It was good for the nation's publicity, because it was in the middle of the Cold War, and it just showed that the man in the street doesn't mind.
Yeah.
He doesn't get involved, the man in the street. He just accepts people as they are. And he was a nice little man, very pleasant. I remember it being a very joyful day.
Gagarin was in civilian clothes, he was not in uniform, and my first impressions of him were he was a very simple citizen. I thought he's the type that would have been a Russian farmer or something of the sort. He was certainly very unsophisticated.
Oh, right.
And he was stockily built, and quite like me, quite small, and except he was a bigger, stockier build, and altogether I found him a rather delightful person, actually. What were your main sensations during this flight? And he said, well, it was one initially of tremendous noise and acceleration on the liftoff. And he said this was all very shattering, but suddenly it all went, as we went into orbit, it changed to quite serene peace. And he said, peace and quiet in orbit, and also with a little sensation of speed. He said, I just felt I was sitting there drifting round. And I said, then we continued on. I said, did you have any problem with either re-entry or the bailout? And he said, the bailout and the landing procedure. And he said, no, I didn't, but he said the heat on re-entry didn't frighten me, but it, I was very conscious of it, very conscious of it. And he said, I was very grateful after, you see, they had to come down so far and then bail out of the spacecraft and land by parachute.
Did he actually say that to you, that
Yes.
he did bail out? Yes, because
Yeah.
he could see that there weren't any newspaper men or
Yes.
TV cameras, so he perhaps was a bit freer to speak
Yes.
than he otherwise would have been.
Well, I had a feeling, as test pilots, we had quite a rapport, the two of us.
Ah, I see.
And he actually looked as if he was enjoying,
Right.
not you know, per-faced and thinking, oh God, I've got to go through all this and whatnot. And finally I said to him,
what was your main feeling in having achieved such a historic flight in space? And he thought a bit about this, and then he said, these were his actual words, I feel proud, when as translated, I feel proud to show the world that Russia is leading the race in space technology.
From the car, he looked around, you know, very pleasant, very handsome man, beautiful face and complexion. That's what I noticed first.
Yeah. Now, you speak Russian. When Yuri Gagarin was there, you were very close by.
Yeah.
You must have wanted to speak to him.
I was too shy. I was really shy. And on the other hand...
he was a Russian.
Oh, definitely.
And bearing in mind the experiences that you had at the hands of the Russian people many years earlier, do you feel any negative feelings at all?
No, because I never criticized the Russian people. The Russian people are fantastic people. If they have a slice of bread and you've been hungry and he was hungry, he would, without thinking, he would just cut in half, well, half for you, half for me. They were that kind of people. If you were cold, they would take the coat from that you get warm.
But these were the same people who helped split up your family, they imprisoned you.
Oh, those people were the government people.
Right.
You see, it's two kind of people.
Right.
Russian people are very warm people, because they must have gone through what we gone through times after times after times.